Aisha Jackson was mid-sentence when the door slammed open. "Nobody move." Military police stormed the veteran support group meeting, weapons raised. Aisha's teacup shattered on the floor as rough hands yanked her arms behind her back. "Aisha Jackson, you're under arrest for stolen valor and fraud." The other veterans gawked as she was hauled away in handcuffs. The evening had begun like any Thursday at the Detroit Community Center. 11 veterans sat in a circle of scuffed chairs under harsh fluorescent lights, shadows flickering across faces carved with unseen scars. Aisha had attended these meetings for 10 months, always claiming the same seat by the window, arriving 5 minutes early. She spoke rarely, but her words carried a gravity that made others lean in. Tonight was different. Jamal Reed, a former Air Force tech with a goatee and a brash demeanor, had been dominating the discussion with increasingly outlandish tales of his deployment to Kuwait. Aisha listened, her jaw tightening with each exaggeration, until Jamal claimed he'd single-handedly dismantled an enemy outpost. "That's not how it works," Aisha said softly, her voice slicing through Jamal's bravado like a blade. "You don't raid a base solo. There are protocols, support, extraction plans. Combat's not a video game." Jamal's eyes narrowed. "What you know about it, lady? You repair AC units for a living." The room stilled. Everyone knew Aisha worked at Coleman's HVAC in Midtown, her hands always smudged with dust, her faded coveralls masking whatever lay beneath. She was unremarkable, petite, quiet, with braided hair kept in a practical bun. "I know because I was there," Aisha said, her voice steady despite the slight shake in her hands. "Iraq, 2020. Our unit was tasked with striking a high-value target compound near Mosul. Intel suggested it was a terrorist safe house." The group exchanged glances. Aisha rarely mentioned her service, offering only vague hints when pressed. Now she spoke with the sharp clarity of a mission briefing. "We moved in at 0300 5-person team. The intel was wrong. It was a trap. They were waiting for us." Aisha's voice grew distant, her eyes fixed on something beyond the Detroit Community Center's cracked ceiling. "The first IED killed our radio. The second one." She touched her neck instinctively, where faint scars peeked from under her denim jacket. Jamal scoffed. "What, you were Delta Force? Green Beret, maybe?" His tone oozed mockery. "Come on, lady. Women don't even make it through that training, let alone see combat." Aisha met his gaze evenly. "Actually," she said, "I was Delta, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment. Call sign Shadow." The room exploded. Half the veterans laughed outright, others shifted uneasily. Jamal yanked out his phone, thumbs jabbing the screen. "This is done. I'm reporting this. Stolen valor's a crime, and I'm not here for some AC tech disrespecting real soldiers." Aisha stayed calm, even as Jamal dialed the military police hotline. She sat still, her breathing steady, while he ranted about frauds and civilians mocking warriors. The other veterans tried to ease the tension, but Jamal was past listening. "You want to know what real combat's like?" Aisha asked softly as they waited. "It's not brave. It's not epic. It's holding your squad mate as they bleed out in your lap, tied to a pipe, hearing them scream your name until they crack and spill everything to the enemy." The room fell silent. Even Jamal stopped pacing. "It's 6 months in a cell too small to lie down in, eating moldy bread and beetles while they try to break you with beatings and ice water. It's escaping by strangling 2 guards with a rusted wire and trekking 39 miles through enemy land with a fractured collarbone and punctured lung." Her voice never faltered, delivered with the flat precision of a weather report, but her hands trembled so fiercely she had to grip them tightly together. "It's coming home to a nation that wiped every trace of your service, handed you a new name, and ordered you to bury it all because it was too sensitive for any record. It's fixing AC units because it's the only job they could set up that wouldn't trigger a background check, risking exposure of missions that never officially happened." That's when the door had burst open. Now, as the police car sped away from the Detroit Community Center, Aisha glimpsed her reflection in the window. She looked exactly as intended, a 32-year-old technician living quietly in a one-room apartment above the Soul Food Diner on Grand Avenue. Someone ordinary. Someone invisible. Someone who definitely wasn't a decorated operative with more confirmed kills than most had years. But the faint scars on her neck told another truth. And somewhere, in a classified file that didn't exist, General Carla Evans was about to get a call that would shift everything. Detective Marcus Tate slammed the case file shut, the sound ricocheting through the empty precinct at 3:14 a.m. 4 days of questioning, and Aisha Jackson hadn't flinched. Every other stolen valor case he'd worked crumbled fast. The fakes always tripped over basic military details, mixed up terminology, or couldn't explain their lack of records. But Aisha was different. Aisha was a puzzle wrapped in work boots and coolant stains. Tate rubbed his temples and spread the file's contents across his desk, like fragments of a code that wouldn't break. On one side, a woman absent from every military database, no service history, no discharge forms, no VA benefits, nothing. On the other side, someone who knew things that made his 22-year law enforcement career feel like child's play. The first warning sign came in hour 3 of the initial interrogation. Tate had tried a classic ploy, tossing out fake military jargon to see if she'd slip. "So, tell me about your work with strategic chaos burgers in the field." Aisha had stared at him like he'd sprouted wings. "Detective, there's no such thing as a strategic chaos burger. That's not military terminology. That's something you pulled from a bad TV show. A chaos burger's slang for a total screw-up, but you don't slap strategic on it. Are you seriously testing me, or do you just not know what you're doing?" Strike one for the detective. Hour 5 was worse. Tate had brought in Major LaToya Brooks from the local recruiting office, betting a seasoned officer could unravel the fraud. Brooks spent 40 minutes hammering Aisha with questions on everything from basic training drills to elite counterterrorism tactics. Aisha answered each with a calm precision that screamed first-hand experience. "Describe the sound of incoming RPG fire," Brooks had pressed. "Depends on range and angle," Aisha replied without missing a beat. "Close ones roar like a jet engine mixed with a crack. Far ones have a faint whoosh first, like tearing fabric. But the deadly ones, the ones landing right on you, they don't make a sound you can process. They just hit." Brooks had paled. She pulled Tate aside after, her voice unsteady. "Marcus, I've been in the Army 20 years. I've done 2 tours in Iraq. And I've never heard anyone describe RPG fire like that unless they've lived it." Major Brooks' hands trembled slightly as she spoke, her eyes darting back to Aisha, who sat calmly in the interrogation room, staring at the one-way glass as if she could see through it. "Marcus, I don't know who she is, but she's no fraud. Nobody fakes that kind of detail, not the sound, not the instinct. She's been in the shit." Tate's jaw tightened. He'd built his career on sniffing out lies, but Aisha was rewriting his playbook. In hour 7, he'd tried another angle, digging into her supposed Iraq mission. "So, you're claiming Delta Force 2020 Mosul. Give me specifics, unit designation, commanding officer, anything verifiable." Aisha's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Detective, if I gave you those, I'd be breaking about 6 NDAs and a federal law. You won't find my name in any system because it's not supposed to be there. Check with Fort Bragg, but you'll need clearance higher than yours." Her tone wasn't defiant, just matter-of-fact, like she was explaining how to reset a thermostat. Tate had scoffed, but her words gnawed at him. He'd called Fort Bragg only to get stonewalled by a curt, "No record exists" from a voice that sounded too senior to be answering phones. Strike 2. By day 3, Tate tried psychological pressure, leaving Aisha in the interrogation room for hours with no food, no water, just a flickering bulb. She didn't complain, didn't fidget, just sat with that same unnerving calm, her braided hair still neat despite the days of questioning. When he finally re-entered, he tossed a photo of her at Coleman's HVAC on the table. "This is you, right? Just a tech fixing air conditioners. No military training, no combat experience. Why keep lying?" Aisha glanced at the photo, her expression unreadable. "That's me. And I'm good at my job. Doesn't mean I haven't done others." Her voice carried a weight that made Tate's skin prickle. He pushed harder, citing inconsistencies in her civilian records, gaps in employment, no high school diploma, no tax filings before 2021. Because I didn't exist before then, she said simply. Not as Aisha Jackson. Strike 3. Brooks, still rattled, had stayed for the next session, throwing curveballs about Delta Force protocols, insertion methods, exfil under fire, even the feel of a sandstorm in a night op. Aisha answered each with eerie accuracy, describing the way sand stung like needles in 60 miles per hour winds, the exact hand signals for a silent breach. Brooks finally snapped, "How do you know this?" Aisha's eyes softened, just for a moment. "Because I lived it, Major. You know what it's like to come home and have to pretend it never happened." Brooks stormed out, muttering about needing a drink. Tate stared at the file, his gut screaming that Aisha wasn't lying, but his brain refused to accept a ghost with no records could be real. Somewhere, General Carla Evans' phone was ringing, and Tate had a sinking feeling he'd just stepped into something way above his pay grade. That woman just described RPG fire better than most of my combat vets. Either she's the most committed fraud I've ever seen, or she's telling the truth. And something's seriously off here. By day 3, Tate was barely sleeping. Aisha's knowledge wasn't just spot on, it was eerily precise, hinting at classified intel. She'd referenced drone systems that didn't officially exist, outlined tactics absent from any field manual he could dig up, and mentioned operations with no public trace. "Tell me about your training," he pressed during one session. "Which part? Close quarters combat, advanced reconnaissance, survival, evasion, resistance, escape? Or you asking about the Black Ops programs with no names?" Aisha had studied him for a long moment. "Detective, if I told you about those, you'd either think I'm crazy or you'd have to silence me to protect national security. Neither sounds fun." The breakthrough, if you could call it that, came when Tate brought in Dr. Keisha Morris, a psychiatrist specializing in PTSD cases. Morris was meant to assess Aisha's mental state, to determine if she was delusional or just lying. Instead, she emerged from the session looking like she'd seen a specter. "Marcus, we need to talk, alone." In the hallway, Morris gripped his arm, her fingers shaking. That woman's been through trauma that would shatter most people. The way she describes her captivity, the specific details about interrogation methods, the psychological scars, it's not something you can fake or Google. This is lived experience. But there's no record of her service. Then maybe the records are wrong. Or maybe they're gone for a reason. That night, Tate did something he'd never done in 22 years of police work. He started making off-the-books calls to contacts in federal agencies, probing vaguely about covert units and black ops. Most hung up. A few warned him to drop it and forget he'd asked. One, a retired CIA officer named Hawkins now with some shadowy agency, listened in stony silence before saying, "Detective Tate, you're stepping into waters way over your head. File the case, process the paperwork, and act like this woman never existed." But Tate couldn't let it go, because on day 4, Aisha did something that changed everything. He'd been pressing her about her alleged escape from captivity, demanding verifiable details. Aisha remained patient, almost kind, like explaining to a kid who couldn't grasp simple ideas. "You want proof, detective? Something solid?" She rolled up her right sleeve, revealing a forearm etched with what seemed like random scars. "These aren't random. They're a map." Tate leaned in despite himself. "Latitude and longitude carved with a shard of metal during my 4th month in captivity. The compound's location where they held me. The GPS of the mass grave where they buried the others. The coordinates of the arms cache they plan to use next." Her finger traced the scars, and Tate saw they weren't random. Numbers, etched deep, precise, functional. "I memorized everything, detective. Every face, every voice, every detail of that place because I knew someone would need it someday. The question is, are you brave enough to verify it?" Tate stared at those scars for a solid minute, his mind spinning. If Aisha was lying, she was the most meticulous fraud he'd ever encountered. If she was telling the truth, then someone with serious clout had gone to extreme measures to erase her existence, and that someone was about to learn their carefully crafted cover was unraveling in a gritty Detroit precinct. One step at a time, Tate reached for his phone. It was time to make a call that could either torch his career or rewrite everything he thought he knew about covert operations. The number he dialed belonged to General Carla Evans, and it was about to ring in a secure facility that didn't officially exist. General Carla Evans hadn't stepped foot in a civilian police station in 17 years. But the encrypted call from a restricted line had smashed her Wednesday morning like a wrecking ball through a window. She'd been reviewing classified briefings in her Langley office when Agent Brooks, no relation, just cruel coincidence, delivered news that froze her veins. "Ma'am, we have a situation. A woman named Aisha Jackson's been arrested for stolen valor. She's claiming former Delta Force, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment. The local detective's asking about Black Ops." Evans dropped her pen, ink bleeding across secure documents like a wound. "What did you say her name was?" "Aisha Jackson, ma'am, 32, AC technician in Detroit. I'll be there in 3 hours." The drive from Virginia to Detroit gave Evans time to think, and thinking was the last thing she wanted. Aisha Jackson. The name was a specter, tied to a woman presumed dead, buried in a classified file so restricted even Evans needed top-tier clearance to touch it. Ghosts had a way of resurfacing, especially when you'd signed the order to erase them. Now she strode through the Detroit precinct like she owned it, her crisp uniform commanding deference from every officer. The medals on her chest chronicled 3 decades in military intelligence, shaping global conflicts in ways civilians would never grasp. Yet none of those medals marked her greatest triumph or her deepest failure. Detective Tate met her at the desk, a weary man with sharp eyes and a jaw set for trouble. "General Evans, I'm Detective Tate." "I didn't expect." Evans cut him off with a glare that had silenced warlords and spies. "You're wading into waters so deep they don't exist on any chart. Where is she?" Tate led her through a labyrinth of halls, rattling on about evidence, jurisdiction, procedure. Evans let him talk, her mind sifting through impossibilities. How had Aisha survived? The last intelligence report had been clear. All members of Unit 19 were Kia, their bodies recovered and laid to rest with full military honors at Arlington. Evans had personally handed folded flags to their families, looked into Aisha's sister's eyes, and lied with the polished ease of someone who'd spent her career guarding state secrets. But if Aisha was alive, if she'd somehow survived. "She's been here 4 days, Tate was saying. Won't crack, won't budge on her story. Claims she was in a covert unit, records erased. I've never seen anything like it, General. Either she's the most committed fraud ever, or she's telling the truth," Evans finished softly. They stopped outside interrogation room 4. Through the one-way glass, Evans saw a petite woman sitting perfectly still at a steel table. Aisha looked older, worn by years of living a shadow life, but her posture was unmistakable. Even in civilian clothes, even after all this time, she sat like a soldier, like Delta Force. Evans felt the weight of 6 years crash onto her shoulders. 6 years of believing she'd sent 9 of the Army's elite to their graves. 6 years of carrying the guilt of Operation Darkwave, the mission meant to cripple a terrorist network but ending in disaster. "I need to see her alone," Evans said. "Ma'am, this is an active investigation, I can't just..." Evans turned, and Tate saw something in her eyes that made him step back. "Detective, what I'm about to tell you is classified beyond top secret. That woman isn't just a veteran. She's a weapon. A living, breathing asset built for missions that would haunt you for life. And if she's who I think she is, we're facing a problem far bigger than stolen valor." Tate swallowed hard. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that could ignite a war." Evans entered the interrogation room alone, her pulse pounding in her chest. Aisha looked up, and for a moment, time froze. The years dissolved, and Evans was back in the briefing room at Fort Bragg, facing 9 women who'd volunteered for the most perilous mission in Delta Force history. "General Evans." Aisha's voice broke like a young recruit's, her carefully held composure shattering instantly. "They told me you were dead. The whole unit. They said everyone was Kia." Evans sat slowly, studying the woman before her. Aisha looked like a civilian, like someone who'd never wielded a rifle or taken a life. But Evans knew better. She knew what hid beneath the technicians' coveralls and the meticulously crafted ordinary life. "Show me your right shoulder blade," Evans said quietly. Aisha's eyes flicked to the one-way mirror. "General, there are people watching." "Show me." Aisha turned slowly, lifting her shirt. There, beneath a vibrant lotus tattoo clearly added later, was a small black dagger with a star. But it was the number below it that stole Evans' breath, 19. The unit that never officially existed. The program buried so deep that even whispering its name was treason. "My God," Evans murmured. "You're really alive." Aisha turned back, tears streaming down her face. "I've been trying to tell them for 4 days. I've been trying to tell someone for 6 years, but no one believes me because I don't exist anymore, do I? You made sure of that." The accusation struck Evans like a fist. Aisha was right. Evans had authorized the cover-up, decided the truth about Operation Darkwave was too volatile to ever surface. She'd erased 9 women from history to shield a secret that could destabilize nations. "Aisha, you have to understand." "Understand what?" Aisha's voice rose, 6 years of buried fury breaking loose. "That you left me to die? That you told my sister I was dead while I was being tortured in an Iraqi cell? That you gave me a fake identity and a fake life and told me to forget everything I'd sacrificed for this country." Evans felt the walls closing in. Through the glass, she saw Detective Tate watching closely, likely recording every word. This was meant to be damage control, a quiet fix for a situation threatening to expose one of the military's darkest secrets. She'd spent weeks prying loose a rusted nail in her cell wall, working in stolen moments when guards weren't looking. When the chance came, she'd used it to kill 2 guards and fight her way out of the compound. 39 miles, Aisha said. 39 miles through hostile territory with a fractured collarbone and punctured lung. "I walked for 4 days, hiding by day, navigating by the stars like some ancient wanderer." "You saved yourself," Evans said. "And in doing so, you saved the program." "What do you mean?" Evans activated the tablet again, pulling up classified reports from the aftermath of Aisha's escape. "Your route led our forces straight to the compound. We extracted the rest of your team within 48 hours. More crucially, we dismantled the entire terrorist network, including the double agent who set you up." Aisha stared at the screen, seeing photos of her teammates loaded onto medevac choppers. Alive, but shattered. "They're really alive. All of them." "Physically, yes," Evans said. "Psychologically," she trailed off. "That's why we erased you all. The mission was too sensitive to acknowledge, the trauma too deep to ignore. We gave you new identities, new lives, a chance to heal without carrying state secrets." "We weren't healing," Aisha said. "We were rotting inside, thinking we were alone, thinking we'd failed." "I know," Evans said, her voice heavy with 6 years of guilt. "I made the wrong call. I thought I was protecting you, the program, national security. Instead, I was just protecting my own career." Aisha studied Evans' face, seeing the toll of the cover-up. Evans looked older than her years, worn by secrets and the knowledge her decisions had broken 9 women who trusted her. "What happens now?" Aisha asked. Evans was silent for a long moment. Evans weighed options, all pointing to one truth. "Now we fix this. All of it. I'm reuniting your team, restoring your real identities, and ensuring you get the recognition you deserve. Unit 19 is being reactivated, with proper oversight, support systems, and accountability this time." The Pentagon's finally grasped that the future of special ops isn't just bigger weapons or smarter tech. It's soldiers who think differently, who see what others miss. Aisha felt something she hadn't in 6 years. Hope. And the ones behind the ambush? Evan's smile was icy, honed by decades in intelligence. Justice has a long memory and a longer reach. Within hours, all charges against Aisha Jackson were dropped. The official report cited insufficient evidence, but Detective Tate knew better. He'd seen the steel in General Evans' eyes, caught enough of their talk to know he'd stumbled into something far beyond stolen valor. That night, Aisha Jackson officially died in a crash on I-94. The woman who left the precinct had a new name, a new life, and, at last, recognition as a Delta Force operative. More importantly, she had what she'd lost 6 years ago in an Iraqi cell: her team. The reunion would take place in a secure facility outside Langley, where 9 women would meet for the first time since their world collapsed. They'd cry, rage, and mourn the years stolen from them. But they'd do it together, as a unit, as sisters who'd survived hell. And somewhere in Langley, General Carla Evans would begin rebuilding Unit 19, vowing that this time, politics and secrecy wouldn't shatter the warriors who trusted her with everything. The ghosts were coming home.